the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC? Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
Please go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell, and I'm alone again this week. My guest is Bobby Thornton, Metal Bob, host of the Metal Bob Live podcast. He joins me. He used to be a former co-host of the Nothing Shocking podcast back in the early days, and we had some great times back then. We kind of reminisce about a few of those stories, but he's got a new podcast called Metal Bob Live where he talks to some of his favorite artists, and I wanted to hook up with him, especially during this Corona time, and just see how he's doing and talk about his podcast a little bit, and just kind of talk about music in general. It was a fun to reconnect with him, and I'm really glad he could be on the podcast again, and look forward to that chat later in the podcast. Before we get there, I want to let you know that we're at zwigsonline.com, zpnetwork.com, although we're moving sites we are on Libsyn at the moment. I haven't bought a domain name yet, but the podcast, there is a site for it. It's just a long name that I can't really read off. But if you check us out on Facebook at the Nothing Shocking Podcast community fan page and Twitter at NoShockPod, you'll find our episodes there. And as like I said, ZoigsOnline.com. If you click on the podcast tab, you'll see all the podcasts we've had. And then we're on YouTube as well. So subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. Click the little bell up in the corner to get notifications when a new episode comes out on YouTube. Please rate and review the show. Subscribe. Like I said, it does help the podcast out, get past all those algorithms. Our sponsors are Ragged Records, although they're not open at the moment due to being on quarantine or whatever we're going to call this. And then Legends Picks from Milan, Illinois. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. And then Hong Kong Sleepover, thank you so much for letting us use your music on the show as well. It's a weird time. When Bob and I did the podcast, it was a week ago, and now they're saying that concerts may not be back till fall of 2021. That scares me. I mean, obviously we got to do what we got to do to make sure this goes away and take care of ourselves, but I can't imagine not having concerts or sporting events or anything for a year and a half. That really bums me out. You know, there's that stadium tour with Motley Crue and Def Leppard that we talk about on the podcast. That was a big deal. Guns N' Roses has a stadium tour again. I was hoping to check out Louder Than Life again. It's just a lot that we've really taken for granted, all these bands that we didn't go see or we watched on YouTube. Now that's going to be taken away from us potentially. Hopefully it doesn't get there. But, if it has to, it has to. And that leaves a lot of artists, struggling to make it. There's just a lot of things that are going to go on that, so I don't know. Take care of yourself. The better you do at social distancing, the more likely that this ends. So if we can all do our part, hopefully we can get through this and get back to some more rock shows. But, I guess I'll just head over to our interview with Bob Thornton, Metal Bob Live. You can find on all your podcatchers, just like us, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa. You can check them all out. Metal Bob Live. If you enjoy our podcast, you'll definitely enjoy his. And it was a great time catching up with him, and enjoy. How you been doing?
Doing good, man. What's going on with you, buddy?
Not a whole lot. Just kind of hanging out, quarantined, or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah. No shit, right?
Yeah.
It's getting kind of depressing, I'll tell you what, man, sitting in this house all the time.
It's weird. It comes and goes, but, normally you go through like a depressing stage, like a couple weeks, whatever. Now it's like every day, at some point in the day, you hit that depressing level where you just feel horrible. But it does seem to turn around, within the day. At least for me, it has been. It's been weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you up to?
Oh, man, buddy, I'm just, well, as you know, man, I started running that new podcast, the Metal Bob Live podcast. That's been going really good for us. We're pushing out 2 to 3 episodes a week here lately. So.
Yeah, I've been kind of watching it and listening to it. It's really, really awesome. I mean, you got a badass logo right off the bat before I even heard anything. It's doing really well. Congratulations on that. What brought that on?
Well, I'm not doing the music thing too much anymore, man. I don't want to say soft face the earth, but I kind of basically semi-retired from it. And I moved to Missouri, and I didn't really want to put forth the effort to try to find a band to put together. So I decided to kind of do this to keep me busy, man, and kind of fill that void.
Do you feel that it fills the void? I mean, I similar to me. I never even ventured into it. I mean, I played instruments, but I never ever really had a band. I had kind of a quasi band. We never played live, and then I kind of got away from it. And then my friend was just like, "Hey, you want to start interviewing people?" And it has worked for me. It's not the same, but it's been cool to kind of be involved again. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, man. It's definitely a different thing than playing out live. I mean, nothing's like strapping on a guitar, singing, or getting out there in front of a bunch of people and playing songs. But at the same time, I've got the opportunity, as you do. You're interviewing a bunch of these guys you grew up listening to, and that you looked up to, and at the end of the day, it's a pretty good feeling.
Is there who has kind of been so far, at least in your, whether it's as a musician or a podcaster, has there been that moment where it was just like, holy shit, I'm talking to this guy?
I'm kind of like that with a lot of them because, I like a wide variety of different range of different artists. But it's neat to sit and listen to what these guys got to say and kind of find out how they grew up in the business. And, it's never dull, man. It's always an interesting story. I mean,
right.
It's interesting to hear what some of these guys got to say, especially now with the way things are. A lot of them can't even get out and play. So that's been an interesting subject also. Yeah,
very much so. Let's see here. You used to be on the Nothing Shocking podcast. You're one of the early co-hosts of it. For those who haven't listened or didn't listen back then, one of my favorite moments was when you and I got to interview Paul Gilbert. And I always ask this question. I heard Slash once talk about style, and Paul Gilbert's just like, well, his style is just really your influences. And you looked at him and you said, well, I've been influenced by you. Why don't I sound like you? I just...
Right.
Absolutely loved. I retell that story all the time. I don't know. That was a lot of fun back then, and I'm glad you're back into it now. And I mean, I'm looking at your site. Rudy Sarzo's coming up. That's one guy I've never talked to. Is this someone you've known in the past, or is this kind of a first time interview for you?
This would be first time for me. I just kind of reached out to him through social media, and then he got back with me. And it took a few times to hit him up, but we finally worked out a date and time. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's
That'll
awesome.
be a good one. But yeah, you mentioned that Paul Gilbert one. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, that was a pretty big one for me too, man. He's one of my favorites, and we also did Michael Monroe was a great one. I remember doing with you also.
Yeah, that was exciting because I remember you were. I mean, I am aware of Hanoi Rocks and Michael Monroe, but I wasn't as. I don't know. I just never really listened to it. But you were are a huge fan of them, and it was really cool to be able to be there and witness it. It's one thing when you're feeling it yourself. It's another thing when you get to see someone else feel it, and it was just a really cool moment.
Yeah, I love, growing up in that genre, I just love all that stuff, man. Anybody that knows me or who has known me most of my life knows how I felt about that music. I live, breathe, and eat it, so it's just like, anytime I get a chance to talk to any of these guys and ask them questions, it's good.
That's awesome.
And I know you mentioned the logo. Before I forget, I want to shout out my producer, Jeremiah Calick. I got a guy behind the scenes. He'll be on some of the episodes from time to time, but he's the one that drew up that badass logo you were talking about, so props to him.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. I mean, the Nothing Shocking was very, very low. I don't know what the right word is. We didn't put a whole lot of, we were very indie, I guess, is probably the right word. So you have a producer. Is he out there in Missouri with you, or how did you guys all get hooked up?
Yeah, he's here in Missouri. We had worked together for a while, so that's kind of how we got talking about it. He was like helping me get the thing going. Then he decided, hey man, why don't you just let me get in on this and help you out? I'm kind of glad I did, because I didn't realize how much work actually goes into doing this. There's more than I thought there was.
Mm-hmm.
With the editing and the producing and the, setting up the interviews. It takes up a little bit of time.
Oh yeah, I found myself over the last. I started out blogging, so it's probably been over 10 years I've been doing this, and there are moments where you get really productive, and then there's times where you just you burn out, or at least I did, and. Because it is a ton of work. Setting up the interviews alone is a ton of work. But then you're right, when you get on the back end of the podcasting stuff. I remember when you called out talking about it, I was kind of showing you my setup, and it's just a lot of, and things have changed too. So, and it's hard to keep up with everything. I just figured out how to put my shit on YouTube. I've been on iTunes for so long, or Apple Podcasts. It's just been I don't know. Everything's changing all the time. It's really cool. Though the podcasting thing, and I don't know. So what else do you got coming up?
Oh man, well, like I said, we got Rudy Sarzo coming up. I just did an interview with Steven Chereau from Kick Tracy.
Nice.
We got I've got Jim Seals from the Grammy Award-winning band Shenandoah is going to be on. That interview will be coming out shortly.
That's awesome.
We had Billy Morris, from Warrant. We got a whole string of guests coming up. Some of these have already been done. They're just waiting to be loaded up. So you should see a few more episodes here in the next week or so.
That's really exciting. I wish I was that productive.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to do a shout out for my buddy, the guy that did my logo, Jeremiah Calick. He's a big artist, and he's got a YouTube or an Instagram page. It's at JJ. Kalleck on Instagram. Check him out, man. He's got some really interesting art projects that he works on that he shares with everybody, and it's really neat to see.
We'll definitely do that. I'm actually doing that right now. Where can we find your podcast at? I don't want to get all the way through the episode and forget to ask.
Well, it's up on Google now. It's on Apple Music, iTunes. It's going to be up on Spotify. Pretty much all your major outlets now. It's been released there in the last couple of weeks. You shouldn't have any problem finding them. That's
exciting. Man, I'm really good at this interview thing, aren't I? What are you listening to right now? Go ahead.
It's good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, no, I've been really excited about this, and then I get here and I just draw a blank because we haven't really the way you left the podcast. You kind of moved away. There was never any bad blood or anything. It was just things. We got busy, and the way, Eric's still not left, but he's not been on in a long time. Life just kind of takes over and moves things separately, and I'm just kind of doing it myself for fun. But I enjoyed whenever you came over. I enjoyed, you're always a fun guy to hang out with, and I'm glad we can finally reconnect via podcasting. And what are you listening to these days, or at the moment?
Oh, man. I listen to the same stuff I was listening to 20 years ago. But if you're talking about newer stuff, there's a band called Black Swan that I've been digging on a lot lately, man. That's got like Red Beach and Jeff Pilson in that band. Robin McCauley sings.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of the old school guys, putting a lot of these new projects together. That's what I've been getting into a lot, is these these side projects. A lot of the old artists are doing. They're collaborating and doing these I don't want to call them one-offs. They don't usually tour a lot on these albums when they do them, but they put out some great music. And, Black Swan's probably one. the new Steve. Well, it's not new, but it's a few years ago. Stephen Shiro put a new record out. I've been checking that out a lot. It's called Golden. How about you, man? Anything new catching your ear?
I mean, I've just started listening to the Sons of Apollo. Their new album, not just started. They came out in January. That's another one of the side project bands. But they actually are touring with Bumblefoot and Mike Portnoy and Billy Sheehan and Derek Shrinian, Jeff Scott Soto. He was actually just on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so that's really the main one. There's this band called Bat Farm. I actually had them on the podcast, too. I've been a fan of them since, well, really this girl, Alex Calise, she sent me her stuff way back when I was first starting out, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, my God, she's going to be huge. I mean, if you heard these songs, you'd be like, I could see these being hits. Well, they never really took off. They, like, ended up on Dance Moms or something like that. But they're, like, I mean, they're really good songs, and then she sent me her band that's called Bat Farm now, and I was listening to it, and it was way different than her pop stuff. It was just really, really, I don't know, artistic and out there. Nothing sounded the same. Everything they did was kind of evolved, and it was just really cool. Her bandmate's Dennis Morehouse. He played with Mark Ford from the Black Crowes, and he's in his band. It's just, I've been listening to those two things a lot in terms of new bands. In terms of old stuff, I mean, I've been going through this heart kick. I don't know why, but like Nancy.
Nothing wrong with that.
I don't know. I've been watching like Barracuda and Crazy on You and all those. I don't know. Trying to learn how to play them, and it's been, I don't know. It's been awesome, actually. I've kind of enjoyed this quarantine thing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it amazes me, though, man. You'll hear something that just catches your ear and you're just like, God, this is great, but it never catches any traction. Like, that always kills me, you know, some of the stuff that just should be just being played on the radio and just, you know, being eaten up by everybody. It's just, some of it just don't. I never understand that.
Well, it's just, in order to get out there, it's so hard. I mean, that's the one thing I've noticed is, you know, these bands I've looked up to, and I'll go out on the road and I'll meet them on their tour bus and hang out, and it was just like, oh my God, they're just like literally living in a traveling dorm. You know, it sounds like fun, and it probably is at times, but imagine, I mean, how do you not kill each other? You know, there's so many things that go into making it as a musician that it really did open my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I went on huge tours. We went and played some different cities, and I got to travel a little bit playing live music. But yeah, man, I could see where that could be rough at times, man. I mean, you're doing what you love to do, but at the same time, you're around the same 4 or 5 guys all the time, and you know, especially if you got a family or something. You know, that stuff gets a little rough.
And
you know, I think that life's kind of for the single musician or the guy that don't care, you know, that just that's all he wants to do. That's who that life's for, man. You know, and then I enjoyed it when I did it. I'm glad that I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
Not because I don't miss it or love it. It's just that, man, you know, especially when you're holding down an actual job, you know, I've done, you know, there was only a few years there where I didn't work. It's all I did was play music. And I got burned out. I think we did like 500 shows in 3 years, which to me is a lot. You know,
yeah,
in that span where that's all I was doing. But I had to play all the time because I was not working a job. I was just playing music. And not that playing music isn't a job; it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
But
you got to keep it fun.
You know, you miss out on a lot when you're not when you're on the road all the time and playing all the time. You know, especially if you're working Monday through Friday, and then you know Friday and Saturday and Sunday you're playing, you know, in a bar somewhere or wherever, you know.
Yeah, because it's not just that 2 hours you're on stage or 4 hours, whatever it is. You got to set up, you got to get there. There's a lot that goes into it. And a friend of mine, the guy who got me into all this, he's a writer, and he got to talk to Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote Fight Club, and I don't know if they're friends or not, but they communicated back and forth, and he said you need to treat writing like it's your mistress, and you need to treat your day job like it's your wife, and you need to keep writing fun. And I kind of look at music the same way. I mean, if you can keep it fun, then it doesn't turn into a job, but it, you know, when it becomes your job, then it's your job, and it's hard to keep that fun sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, like I said, man, I used to tell people that when you go, man, you know, how much you guys charge to play a gig? I said, we don't charge to play the gig. We charge to load the equipment in, to load the equipment back up the end of the night. We're playing the music for free. That's the way I always looked at it. It was all the other work. See, these establishments didn't see, there's a lot of work that goes into it. They don't see all the gear you got to buy, all the gear you got to maintain, all that different. All they see is, oh, you're coming here to play, music for a few hours, and we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. But they don't see how much we're spending on the back end of this whole thing.
No, I know every show I go to, especially when I was young, because I'm an accountant by day, so money has always been, and I hate that. I hate that it always comes into the podcast whenever I talk. But I'll watch an opening band that I've never heard of, and they got these like $5,000-$10,000 guitars and drums, and I'm just like, how do they afford this? And it drives me, like, I just sit there and I can't wrap my head around it, and it almost stresses me out for them, even though they're there's probably, every situation's different, but there really is a lot there that people don't know about, but at the same time, it's awesome, and I love, for me, I'm a really shy person, so I don't necessarily need to be in front of somebody. I'm sure if I ever was, and I got the reaction that you get, then it would probably hook me in it'd be a drug you want to chase all the time. But I'm totally happy just playing. That's really where my love for it is just playing the instrument and being in my basement and turning the stereo on as loud as I can and writing songs. It's just, I don't know, that as of now is enough for me, because I don't think I know what I'm missing. But if someone who knows what they're missing, what do you do to, scratch that itch, or can you, or do you just have to deal?
Yeah, that's this podcast. Like I said, this fills the void quite a bit. When I say when I'm semi-retired, I'm still writing music. There's a couple projects we're trying to get off the ground right now as far as recording. I don't plan on going out and, supporting it, the record or whatever happens with it, but that doesn't mean we won't either. If there's enough interest, yeah, we might do something, but it's self-gratifying. What we're trying to work on and do right now is more self-gratifying, something that I feel like needs to be done for me personally. Not necessarily. I want people to get it and enjoy it and like it, but it's more for me personally. A couple things that I feel like I need to finish.
That's what
it's all over with, and it's not necessarily playing out. It's just there's some things I want to get recorded and
right,
get out there for people to hear. That'll probably be it for me. That's about the only thing left that I need to do. There's a couple projects that are kind of half finished, and a couple other things in the works that will hopefully come about here in the next year or two.
But that is something I've noticed from some of my heroes, some young artists. It's this era of the music industry where there's not a lot of money in the record sales. There's less pressure on you. You talk about that era, that you like, and how towards the end there was a lot of good stuff that got lumped in with stuff that was getting watered down, and it was because record labels are making certain bands try to sound like a different band instead of being themselves. And, that happened again in the 90s and happened again in the late 90s and 2000s. But as the money went away from the records, people are allowed to just kind of go and do what they want. And then basically you get to that point where you stop chasing success and you just start chasing your art. And like you were saying, the project you just want to get done. You want to see it fulfilled. And that's way more exciting for me than, being the number one. Not that you wouldn't want having the number one record in the world. That would be awesome. But when that's not the goal is to satisfy yourself. That's when you see some of the best art getting released.
Yeah. Well, and I talked to Billy Morris the other day. That interview should be coming out here shortly. But, we talked a little bit, and we were talking about some of his new projects and some of the stuff he's got coming up. He's just like, he goes, honestly, he said, if it was up, he'll give his music away. That's what he told me on the podcast. He goes, hey, hit me up on social media, PM. He goes, I'll send you a CD. He goes, at least then I know that people are listening to it. It's getting out to people. He goes, I'll just give it away. And that's what he kept telling me. And I'm like, wow. He goes, hell, I could put $10 a CD on there to, take me all year to sell six CDs. Hell, I'll just give them away. there's no reason for even. He goes, I'd love to sell music, and he said, I'd love to be able to do all that. He says, but as long as people are getting the music and hearing it, he goes, I'm at the end of the day, he's happy. And that's what he said. I'll just give it to him.
That's awesome. I don't know. I love talking music. I love talking all this stuff. Let's rewind it a little bit. I mean, it's weird. We met probably in our late 30s, early 40s. I don't remember how old you were at the time, but we're not that far apart in age. But our dads had crossed when they were younger. Tell me about your upbringing. What got you into music? Like, where was the first, was there a band that really got it started for you? Or,
Yeah, man. It's definitely, I went through a lot of phases, and, the first record I ever bought with my own money was Wasp, self-titled,
Yeah.
Was always into Wasp and Motley Crue, but the band that really got me excited and really got me wanting to play music was L.A. Guns. And I'm still a huge L.A. Guns fan. I've seen them 50 times.
That's awesome.
I try to shoot for another 50, but my wife would probably kill me. Yeah, man, L.A. Guns was probably they're the band for me. Them and Motley Crue were always my favorite bands, but L.A. Guns was that band that really made me say, okay, this is what I want to do.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Because they're back together more or less. That's kind of old news. It's been a few years, but was that huge for you when they started playing together again?
Yeah, man. When Tracy and Phil got back together, that was huge for me, man. I would have liked to have seen, the other guys all kind of join in and
right.
Get in on it. I don't want to get into all that because, we don't really know what, I know there's another version of L.A. Guns out there still, Steve Riley in it, which to me, in my opinion, that's kind of silly, but, when you got Tracy and Phil, on one side, and you got your drummer and, your bass player on the other side, it's just like, and no disrespect to none of them, I love them all, but it just drives me crazy. I don't know why they can't all work something out and get back together. I guess, that's up to them and between them, but, yeah, I was super excited when Tracy and Phil got back together, and the stuff they've been putting out together is just amazing. I got to see the new lineup with Tracy and Phil back together, and it smokes, man. It's very, very kick-ass.
It's awesome. What are your thoughts on Motley Crue coming out of retirement? Hopefully they get to do it.
I don't know. At first I was kind of, I'm one of those guys that I just wish one of these bands one time would say, hey, we're done, and just be done.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a part of me that understands it too. Being a musician, it's easy to say, oh, we're done, and then you sit around for a couple of years and you're just like, man, I want to get back out there to do this again. It's in their blood, man. And that's how I understand why. And more power to them, man. They're putting a real good lineup together. They're selling out stadiums left and right. This tour is going to be huge. They say it's on track. As long as everything goes as planned, it's on track to be maybe the biggest selling tour of the summer.
Oh, yeah, probably. For me, it's more like there's so many things that go into that decision. They weren't getting along like they used to. They were. They sounded great. Vince struggled a little bit here and there, but he was getting older, and it's harder when you get older. But now you get away from it and you start to reconnect, and it really seems like it's organic and not just a money thing, and that's why I'm cool with it. But I don't know. Yeah,
it seems. I've seen some of the ticket prices for that concert. I'm just blown away. I'm taken back. But my thing is, if you're obviously people want to go because they're buying the tickets. But if I had the opportunity to go, I may. And the reason I probably won't is because every band that's on that bill I have seen multiple times. So I'm not in no hurry to go out and buy tickets for it.
I've never seen Joan Jett, and I would love to see her. But it's hard to pay $400 to see just Joan Jett.
Yeah, you'll get your opportunity to see shit. She tours quite a bit, man. So I would just wait. I'd wait that one out.
I know. It's one of those things where she, like you said, she tours quite a bit. So it's one of those, well, I'll see her next time around. I'll see her next time around. And being in the Quad Cities, you still got to drive probably 90 minutes to see anybody unless they happen to come to some festival or, theater show, which is pretty rare around here. But yeah, I don't think I've seen Poison either. Now that I think about it, but it's still a very cool lineup. So let's get back to you. So LA Guns, Motley Crue got you into. When did you start playing and singing? When did you know you could sing?
Oh man, dude, my first gig was, I was probably 15 years old when I played my first bar gig. You know, you're talking 30 years ago. I never really necessarily planned on being a singer. You know, I went through several instruments. I finally settled on the bass guitar, which, you know, I'm still just okay at. I'm not a great bass player. I mean, I can get the job done. But then, you know, you could never find anybody to sing, man. Singers were just like, you know, trying to find a good bass player back then and just couldn't do it. So one day I just started singing, man, and I'm like, oh, it don't sound too bad. And that was kind of it, man. I put the bass down, and that's all I've done since.
That's awesome.
I did play a little bit of bass and sing, you know, my first couple bands, but then I just finally got into just singing, man. And that's what I've done ever since is sing. I mean, I still play my bass, you know, around the house and jack around and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it kind of became my thing.
Growing up, I was always the guitar guy. So, I mean, I was always, like, my favorite band's Aerosmith, but I've always kind of tolerated Steven Tyler. You know, I tolerated Mick Jagger. I mean, Robert Plant's amazing, but it was still Jimmy Page, Joe Perry, Keith Richards, you know, Nancy Wilson, you know, Ted Nugent / Mick Mars. Those are my guys. And I never appreciated the singing until I started to, like, when you see Steven Tyler out there at 70 still hitting that note and Dream On, and you're like, what does it take to maintain that? And I mean, just singing in my car driving home from college and losing my voice before I got home. How did you, is that something that you had to be trained on? Or, because that's my appreciation really, that's when it really kind of hit. You know, you can have a cold and be a guitar player and still play the show. If you have a cold or the flu, it's a lot harder to be a singer than it is to be anybody else in that band. How do you get through things like that?
Man, I'll be honest with you. You know, there's been times where I've tried to push through it, and a lot of times that makes it worse. I mean, but yeah, you know, I'd had plenty of struggles at times being sick, or you know, there's been times I had to cancel shows too because I just absolutely couldn't do it. But yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, really, the biggest key is, and I shouldn't be the spokesperson for this because I'm not the best person to say this, but just take care of yourself, man. Drink a lot of water and lay off the beer, man. When you're performing, I mean, the beer and the alcohol really tears your voice up, man. And like I said, I was never real good at that. So
yeah, but I mean, Ronnie,
I always had to have my beer when I was playing, man. I mean, really, that's the key, man. I mean, taking care of yourself is the only advice I can give people, but and that's kind of hypocritical of me because I didn't take very good care of my voice. It's changed a lot over the years. I mean, I don't have the voice I used to have, but you know, because I would power through it and strain through it and do all the things you shouldn't do to it.
Well, yeah, I think I heard Ronnie James Dio say the way he warmed up before the shows, he'd just smoke a joint and then he'd go out there and he'd play. So, and his voice lasted until the end. So, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, hey, some guys just, you know, natural ability, man. You know, just I know guys that can get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, right out of bed, and just sing like nothing, man. But other guys got to, you know, put a little more effort into it.
Do you think it's something that?
I mean,
go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Your voice is it's a muscle just like anything else, man. You know, if you don't take care of it and you tear it up, I mean, you're going to have some problems.
Because it is like a muscle, so something you think you could get, like we were talking about Vince Neil earlier, and he's been, you know, he gets the most criticism, but it seems like he's really working hard in the gym and trying to take better care of himself. Is it something you think you can get back?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I don't see why, you know, a lot, you know, it's just basically just being healthy, man, and just taking care of it. Make sure you're doing the proper warm-ups before the shows and after the shows. I mean, and it's something that you need to use a lot. You can't just like go, you know, 2 or 3 years and not use it.
Right.
You know, I heard a lot of people, they need to still do some kind of singing even when they're not on tour, just to keep their voice in shape.
And I know this can be a controversial subject with a lot of Motley Crue fans, but I mean, I've seen Guns N' Roses a couple of times the last couple of years, and I'll be honest, Axl has improved his voice since, when he was doing the stuff with like DJ Ashba and Bumblefoot. I mean, he was fine then, but he sounded like the old guy the last couple of times I saw him, like the guy back in the 80s and 90s, or close to it. So, I mean, I think there is something to be said about, getting yourself back in shape and, doing it. I don't know. Do you have any, I guess, as a performer, what's kind of do you have a highlight that really sticks out to you, that it's just a show you keep going back to in your mind?
Oh man, we had probably a gig with Crossroads that I did at one of the Sturgis music festivals. I can't remember the exact year it was, but I just remember, man, getting up on the stage and looking out, man. There was just people as far as you could see, man. I felt like there was everybody and anybody that was at that fair that night was there to see us. At least that's what it felt like, because that's how it was, just packed. And from the first note to the last note, everything went off really well. And that band was always a great band to be in. I spent 13 years in that band, and we actually at one point that same year, we had won the River City Readers Best Band Show. So
wow,
that was always a nice highlight of my musical journey with that band.
Let's talk about musical journeys. It seems to me that, when I look at, our local band, 3 Years Hollow, we'll talk about them a little bit. When they got signed and they got on a tour, they got to do things. It seemed like they worked all this way just to get there, and then now you got to work even harder to maintain it. And I don't know what they're doing now. I think they've definitely slowed down a little bit. When does the work start? Does it start when you get signed? It seems, I don't know, like a never-ending battle, really, more than anything.
I would say the work's always going. I mean, it just depends how much time and effort you want to put into a project. I feel if you're going to do something, you should give it 110%. And if you're not, there's no reason to do it in the first place. Because, I mean, the work never stops. You're always trying to learn new songs. You're always trying to, write new lyrics and add things to your show. I would say it never stops. I think it starts before it even really starts. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you should always be putting that work in at some level or another.
Have you seen Netflix just released this documentary on ZZ Top yet? Have you had a chance to watch that?
I haven't. I know of it. I just haven't sat down and watched it yet.
There's this thing in it where I don't want to spoil anything, but it's early on, so I don't think I am. Where they purposely they kind of stayed mysterious back in the 70s when they first came out, and that is something that was, you look back at those bands, the whole Beatles, Paul is Dead thing, Jimmy Page, does he worship the devil, and all that stuff. It was very mysterious. You don't really know anything about anybody. And then today, in order to really make it, you got to master that social media. You got to be accessible. You got to do these meet and greets, and both are very cool. I do like the accessibility quite a bit, but then, putting your, the rock stars on pedestals and kind of treating them like this big mystery, and the shows were events, that was pretty neat too. Do you I guess in your opinion, is one better than the other?
No, I don't know. I think it's all preference. I mean, really. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm always that one that always goes right at it out of the gate, man. I guess that's kind of how I looked at it.
And you have got to meet a lot of your heroes, so you've been able to have some of that accessibility. Is there I mean, I guess do you have one that just sticks out more than anything? Like, I got to meet this guy. This is insane.
Yeah, for me, it was probably Vince Neil, man, because, I was always such a huge Motley Crue fan, and, when I got to meet him, that was pretty exciting for me. And he,
awesome.
That he took a little time out of his day to sit there and take a couple pictures and, have a quick chat. That was pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to plug or promote? Anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, I just appreciate your time, man, and good to talk to you again. And yeah, like I said, Metal Bob Live podcast. Check it out. And I hope everybody enjoys it. I mean, as much as we do, we enjoy putting the interviews out, and we hope that people enjoy listening to them.
No, I love listening to it. I mean, honestly, I could sit here and just name bands all day long, and we could talk music. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I'm trying to keep this as normal an interview as possible, but I really have enjoyed talking to you. I've been looking forward to this all week. Sorry I had to cancel or postpone the other day, but I'm really glad we got to do this. And ever want to just sit and talk bands or pick a handful of bands and just bullshit on them, let me know. I'll be all for it.
Yeah, man, absolutely, dude. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, now just to go back, I know you'd asked me what other stuff I was listening to right now. But I am listening to, I've always been listening to, Jim Croce, A.J. Croce, singer-songwriter stuff. I'm into a lot of that stuff, too, so just so you know.
Yeah, I definitely remember early on in the show. Didn't he come on, if I'm not mistaken? Or
no, I have not had Croce yet. I would love to have A.J. Croce, that's Jim Croce's son. I'm reaching out to his management right now, hoping to hear back, but...
that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I'm into. Yeah, it'd be great, man, to have him on. His dad's music's timeless. Jim Croce was he was cut awful short, man. His career was only not quite 2 years, and he had several hits. It would have been interesting to see what he would have done if he'd have still been around.
Yeah.
But no, man, that's about it, man. I mean, I'm doing the podcast thing. I know you're doing it. You've been doing it a long time, and I hope it's still working out real well for you too.
Well, I just try to make it fun. If it's fun for me, I'll do it. I don't. When it started to become work, it got really hard, and I know you probably noticed that towards the end of when you were there before you moved. It's tough to do it all the time. But yeah, no, it's been fun, and I'm glad we got to reconnect. And like I said, anytime you want to come back on, or you want to, even if it's not to come back on, just to call and talk about music, I'm all game. You're a fun guy to talk to.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Yeah, man, and I thank you again for your help too, man. I know that I had some questions when I was starting this thing early on, and you were a big help also, so I appreciate you.
No, anytime. It's always good to hear from you. All right,
brother. Well, you have a real good rest of your day, man. I got a couple to do today myself, so.
Oh, nice. All right, cool.
Staying busy, man.
Enjoy yourself. I'll talk to you later.
All right, brother. Be safe, man.
You too. Bye.
I'll be broadcasting.